Welcome to this week's episode of Jonathan on Money. This is episode number 147. So the other week I actually went to my daughter's class for Parent Share Day and I told the kids what I do for a living. Typically, doctors and dentists come, which may be easier for the kids to relate to, especially if they're 4 years old. However, I think I did a good job discussing personal finances to this age group. I first discussed with the Eladim what one can use money for. I gave them pennies, gifts, and goodie bag to help illustrate certain points and to keep them engaged. I also made sure to share key selections of my book where I highlighted the J's for J curve, M is for markets, S is for stocks, and W's for wealth, which the kids seem to enjoy. And it's also led to several live case studies, which helped bring some of the most important money concepts to life. The talk was well received, and the Yeladim felt empowered to make smart financial decisions as they go through life. This whole experience culminated when I saw that I got a full page shout out in the class, a full paragraph shout out, I should say, in the class weekly newsletter, which read, "Thank you to Mr. Shenkman for coming in to financially advise us. We learned that we can use money to buy things, to save, to give tzedakah, to invest and let it grow, and we work to make money. The Eladim all gave a penny to tzedakah. They bought a shiny gold necklace for 1 penny. They got to keep 1 penny to save. Thank you, Mr. Shenkman, for giving up your time to teach us all about money and for giving us a set of play money for our classroom. Thank you for also reading an excerpt from your book, D's for Diversification by Jonathan I. Shenkman, and for sharing it with the Moras. You know, I'm fortunate to get published in some of the country's leading business periodicals from time to time. However, nothing is as prestigious or rewarding as getting this full paragraph shout out at my 4-year-old daughter's weekly class newsletter. It was a pretty geschmack experience. In other news, here's a reminder about my new book, D's for Diversification, the ABCs of Personal Finance, which is available now on Amazon or on jonathanmoney.com. And finally, before we jump into this week's episode, I'd like to share that my upcoming live webinar will be on Thursday, February 12th at 8:30 a.m. featuring Lawrence Garbuz of Lewis and Garbuz PC based in New York and Boaz Feinberg of Arnon Tadmor Levy based in Tel Aviv. Lawrence and Boaz will be discussing escape from New York, tax and estate planning considerations for moving to Florida or Israel. And this program will also offer CPA and CLE credits to accountants and attorneys in New York and New Jersey. And I'll be sure to include the registration information in the show notes to this episode. Okay, now for today's agenda, my talking points this week will discuss how much should you spend on a Chassan watch. Our quote this week is from Thomas Sowell on Tradeoffs. I'll spend the last half of the episode answering listener questions, including what is the ideal level of wealth to have. And finally, we're going to end with an actionable idea to implement your investing life, where we'll discuss how to handle inherited IRAs. With that, let's jump into this week's talking points. So I recently received the following question, which went as follows. My daughter is getting serious with a young man, and things are progressing nicely. During a casual conversation, this Bacher mentioned that all his friends receive Rolexes as their Chassan gifts. I can't afford a Rolex. What advice would you give me on how to approach the situation? So I appreciate this question because it highlights a financial pain point for many families. It also raises a broader issue that all frum families should consider. Before jumping into the heart of the question, let's take a step back and provide some background for listeners. First, what is a chassan gift? The concept of a chassan gift, which is a present, often a watch, that a groom receives from his prospective in-laws upon his engagement, may be unfamiliar to some listeners. I personally never heard of the term until my 20s, and even then it seems strange. Why exactly am I receiving a high-end watch? It just doesn't seem to fit for someone young, earning little money, and with modest, if any, assets. As much as I like to dismiss the custom as silly, there is a long-standing Jewish tradition of a young man receiving a gift upon his engagement. The custom is rooted in the idea of honoring and supporting the groom as he enters marriage. It began as a way for the bride's family to show respect, strengthen the bond between families, and provide a groom with items that would help him fulfill his new spiritual and communal roles. Hundreds of years ago, the Ashkenazic tradition was for the bride's family to give the groom religious items such as a shtender or talis. These gifts symbolize his new role, new responsibilities in Torah study and prayer. In some Sephardic communities, gifts were more focused on jewelry, clothing, or household items. When my grandparents got married in 1955, my great-grandmother gave my Zaidi a gigantic set of shas. My Eastern European great-grandmother, born in 1900, undoubtedly inherited the minhag of giving the chassan a gift from previous generations in the old country. In Judaism, we take our minhagim very seriously, preserving our traditions and providing a link to all previous generations. Next point is around affordability. The first consideration in gift giving is what the bride's family can afford. Remember, the tradition is to give a gift, not necessarily a high-end watch. A talus is a wonderful and practical gift, and it doesn't cost the same as a Rolex. I want to state explicitly that putting one's finances in jeopardy to purchase an chassan gift is the wrong approach. It is imprudent, illogical, short-sighted, and sets the wrong tone. However, if you can afford to buy your son-in-law or your soon-to-be son-in-law a nice piece of jewelry costing thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, that's your prerogative. The next consideration is messaging. The message you send with your choice of gift is also an important consideration. It can send a message to the young couple about priorities and values. A gift of Judaica or Sfarim sets the tone for the importance of Torah learning and Yiddishkeit in everyday life. Other gifts may be less overtly Jewish, but offer practical value when starting a life together, such as a reliable car, laptop for work, or furniture, while a watch is a nice gift that has little utility for a newly married couple. My personal thoughts on an expensive gift for a young groom may be unpopular, but many families in our community are struggling with the basics. Being more judicious with one's choice of gift and decisions leading up to the wedding can help set the chassan and kala on a positive financial trajectory. There is time for the young man to indulge in an expensive piece of jewelry once he earns some money and becomes financially established. Now, here's some broader context. In the same spirit, there's much the frum community can and should do to reduce the cost of wedding process. It all broadly relates to being mindful about unnecessary large financial outlays. I've written about this in the past, and I've spoken about it before. Remember, the cost of a chasana are not limited to the ceremony itself. The rings, the chassan gift, the yichud room gift, and many other elements make the entire process of getting married a financial struggle for too many. There is significant frustration and kvetching about the high cost of living, a frum lifestyle, but not enough questioning of the onerous and unnecessary expenses we self-impose. The truth is, it's time to put an end to lavish wedding gifts and instead focus on items that are more practical for helping a young couple start their life together. Now, to answer this question directly, in terms of your question, you can't afford the watch this bacher is expecting, so he won't be getting it. I recommend having a frank discussion with him. Hopefully, this will lead to a broader conversation about the items upon which you are and are not willing to spend money. It will also help set financial expectations that will guide the young couple to understand the support they will or will not receive. This dialogue will be beneficial to all parties. And let me conclude with this dose of reality. As a father of young girls, I admit that I don't yet have experience managing the marriage process. Before my own wedding, I didn't want to watch, but my father-in-law and I spent a day choosing a talis, a tara, and talis bag, which he gifted to me. As for the wedding itself, I picked the girl, I bought a suit, selected a stellar Masada Kedushin, and showed up. That was it. I didn't have any opinion on many other wedding-related items. I realized that my approach may contrast sharply with others planning a celebration, and my opinion on wedding customs may be overruled. If my future son-in-law truly want a chassan watch and I can purchase it, then why will? Does it really make sense for me to take a stand on such an item when it sparks joy for the young couple and won't impact my finances? Probably not. Though there may need to be a conversation about what we are willing to spend, and I will certainly take the opportunity to remind my kids that spending on one item may come at the expense of spending on something else. This reality underscores one of the most important aspects of personal finance and life in general, the appreciation of compromise and trade-offs. This key principle is the foundation of successful financial management. As the saying goes, you can have anything, but you can't have everything. To conclude, a chassan gift is a wonderful Jewish tradition, but it should not cause financial hardship. More important than the financial outlay is the focus on values, practicality, and providing what is truly needed for a young couple to thrive in Yiddishkeit and Gashmius and ultimately build a bayis ne'eman b'Yisrael. Okay, those are the talking points this week. As a reminder, you can be notified of all my recent articles, webinars, and all the work I put out by subscribing to my free monthly newsletter. at parkbridgewealth.com. This week's quote is from Thomas Sowell. For those who don't know, Thomas Sowell is an American economist, theorist, and senior fellow of the Hoover Institute at Stanford University. Born in 1930, he's actually still active today at age 95 or 96. He grew up in Harlem and later earned degrees from Harvard, Columbia, and University of Chicago, where he studied under the legendary economist Milton Friedman. Sowell is known for his clear, direct writing style and his defense of free market economics, limited government, and individual responsibility. Over a career spanning decades, he has written more than 40 books on economics, race, culture, education, and public policy. His works aim to make complex economic and political ideas accessible to general readers. Sowell is particularly recognized for challenging conventional thinking on issues such as affirmative action, income inequality, and social justice, often emphasizing trade-offs and unintended consequences in policy decisions. Sowell once said, "There are no solutions, only trade-offs." I like this quote because it reminds us that in complex decisions, whether in public policy or personal life, perfect outcomes rarely exist. Instead of searching for a flawless fix, we're forced to weigh competing advantages and disadvantages, accepting certain costs in order to gain other benefits. Every choice carries an opportunity cost. Choosing one path necessarily means giving up another. A law may improve education overall while burdening certain communities. Buying a home may require sacrificing location for space or liquidity for stability. Even technology forces trade-offs. A program can be powerful but complicated or simple but limited. The pursuit of a magic solution often leads to frustration, delay, and unintended consequences. Recognizing trade-offs allows for clearer thinking and more realistic expectations. Rather than being paralyzed by the impossibility of perfection, we focus on selecting the most acceptable compromise given our priorities and constraints. And in the investing world, this is a constant theme. You can go all in on one stock or ETF, but risk getting wiped out. You can rebalance your portfolio to minimize risk, but you will need to pay a meaningful tax bill. You can spend money now and enjoy it or save it for later. Life and financial planning are all about trade-offs. Okay, now let's jump into this week's financial questions. And if you do have a question, feel free to submit it to me and it may be answered in a future episode. Okay, first question. I just got fired from my employer. Should I liquidate my stock options or hold them? My initial thought is to liquidate it, pay tax, and diversify the funds and invest them according to your goals. Single stock exposure is generally not a good idea. While gambling on a concentrated stock position may work out, you can also blow up a significant portion of your nest egg, which is not worth it. Also, this company just fired you, so why would you invest in their piece of direct stock? Am I right? But let's not get emotional about this. This decision will also depend on other factors, including what percentage of your net worth is in the stocks, vesting rules, the tax liability, other personal goals, how your money is invested and how your other money is invested, and details related to your next employer. Like any decision in life, you need to determine the, say it with me, trade-offs and make a decision that is sensible for your personal situation. There are no optimal decisions in life, just decisions that require trade-offs. Next question. I'm going through litigation and my attorney, who's insanely expensive, told me there are financing options. Should I do this? Hire a cheaper lawyer? Any thoughts on this? If you're asking me this question and your attorney's suggesting financing options, this leads me to believe you are a relatively small fish and your attorney's at a large firm. Why does a small fish need a big law firm to represent them? Most things that a large firm can do, a small regional firm can also do, unless you're talking about a bet the company lawsuit involving hundreds of millions of dollars or more. But that ain't you. Big firms are for big companies or billionaires who are not price sensitive and who have the power to pressure big law firms to lower their prices. Borrowing money to hire a specific firm is an insane thing to do and makes no sense. There are many competent lawyers out there. Hire a regional firm or smaller and save your money. In a blink of an eye, a big law firm can generate tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees for you. For example, the simple act of sending you an email, bringing 3 additional associates onto a call so they can charge for their time too, walking down the hall to ask a question to a colleague because they don't know the answer, thinking about your matter in the shower. An attorney actually told me this. His boss told him to do this when he first started to get additional billable hours. And boom, that's 20 hours and at $1,500 an hour, and you haven't even gotten started yet. After a divorce, the next easiest way to instantly incinerate your net worth is for a small fish to hire a big law firm to represent them. Next question. Thoughts on going to Baha Mar over winter break? The cost is high, but I've heard good things. I want to book now to lock it in for next year. Talk about planning ahead. Let's hold your horses, Chief. my thought is to do whatever you want as long as you can afford it. Affording something means you have a 6 month emergency fund, you're maxing out all your retirement accounts, and pay your yeshiva tuition bill in full. If you can do all this and want to spend tens of thousands of dollars depending on family size, then go for it. Money is meant to enhance your life. However, this is not my type of vacation. You didn't ask about my type of vacation, but I feel like ranting, and this is my podcast, so I'm going to do a little bit of that. Going to a place inundated with other Yiddim and paying astronomical prices for kosher food and waiting in line to go on a water slide or to bump into the town Yenta in the lazy river or the shul macher at Mincha or in the Schwitz is not my speed. It feels like my personal hell. I pay a premium to avoid that. Here's an idea. Go to the grocery store and get a few packets of tuna, oatmeal, and protein bars, then find an island or national park that is not near civilization or Jewish infrastructure and embrace the solitude. A vacation from everyone other than your family who you should not abandon is a more pleasant experience. That's a geschmack vacation. Once you do that, you will wonder why you ever paid top dollar to see every Jew you ever met in your life on vacation. For me, the cost is secondary to having a pleasant experience. Next question. My parents just retired and they're very focused on high dividend paying stocks. Is there any downside to buying high yielding stocks? They seem to stick with reputable companies, but I'm wondering if they're missing something. What you're missing, brah, is the fact that I've covered the version of this question before. No worries. As I always say, chazara is a good thing. Anyway, weiter. Your parents' approach is far from optimal. It reeks of the 1980s when people bought a few high dividend paying stocks and thought their retirement was solved. Unfortunately, by focusing strictly on dividends, they're neglecting other sources of growth like income from bonds and, more importantly, capital appreciation. Additionally, they're taking more risk with this strategy by chasing high dividend stocks at the expense of other important considerations. Remember, dividends can be high because the share price has plummeted due to crappy fundamentals. This is how many people blow up their portfolios. They chase high yields with blinders on and don't see any red flags. A far better strategy is called a total return approach, which focuses on return from dividends, income, and capital appreciation, and then withdrawing a safe amount every year. The amount that is considered safe will vary based on investors' age, time horizon, risk tolerance, lifestyle, and other factors that should be discussed with their financial advisor. In short, your parents may be fine or they may blow themselves up and outlive their money. I'd recommend speaking to your mammy and pappy and let them know that the 1980s want their investment strategy back. Next question. I've been doing research and found an ETF that invests in high yielding investments which utilize an option overlay strategy. It yields about 12%. Seems like a nice income. What's the downside, if any? The downside is that you're taking a tush load of risk. Remember, any investment that claims to be able to earn or is currently yielding 12%, then you're taking tons of risk. For those who don't understand how risk works, let me spell it out for you. Lots of risk means you have a good chance of losing lots of money. I say this all the time, but it's worth repeating. Risk and return are inextricably linked. Whether this ETF is using an option strategy, investing in companies that have a high risk of defaulting, or invest with limited liquidity, risk can come in all shapes and sizes, and you should be mindful of that with restructuring your portfolio. If you still want to invest in this ETF, I would segment it into your cowboy account, which is limited to only 5% of your overall portfolio. So when this fund implodes, it won't derail your finances. Okay. Next question. I have accounts with two advisors. One advisor charges a bit more and his performance seems to be slightly lower. My chavrusa said we should move our accounts for these reasons. What are your thoughts on this matter? It sounds like you and your chavrusa should spend more time learning and less time schmoozing. So you're not giving me enough information to tell you exactly what to do here. In terms of performance, every investment strategy moves in cycles. Sometimes things are great, sometimes they suck. Moving because performance has been lower for a period of time does not mean your performance will be superior going forward with the new advisor, since this strategy may be out of favor. Additionally, depending on the makeup of your portfolio, the better performing advisor may be taking more risk with your money, i.e. more equities or bigger bets on certain sectors that have performed well recently, which can generate higher returns when things are great. However, when the economy experiences a recession, which it will, this higher level of risk may come to bite you in the tush. In terms of fees, there is a range of acceptable fees based on the size of your portfolio. If both advisors are within that range, then I wouldn't move just because of fees alone. However, if the advisor is much higher or lower than the average, this may be a red flag. If it's too high, what is this person giving you for their outlandish fees? If this person is charging well below industry averages, then you need to wonder why they are so desperate for the business that they are charging below industry norms. This may be a rookie or someone who needs to make sales targets. Neither of those scenarios is someone you should eagerly give money to. If I were you, I would take a step back and determine what portfolio makes sense to achieve your goals given your time horizon with the desired amount of risk. I then determine what a reasonable fee is based on industry averages, and you could do your own research or ask other advisors what you think, and you could give you a knowledgeable answer. Focusing on recent performance that may not continue or fees without context is not sufficient information to warrant a move. Next question. There's an eatery where I live with an all-you-can-eat buffet. I fill up a tin with various foods. I really jam it in there. I then make separate plates and sell it to guys in yeshiva for $15 a plate, and I earn some spending money for the week. My Rav says this is probably mutter from a strictly halakha perspective. What are your thoughts on this business model? Business model? Your business is predicated on being unethical by not following the rules of an all-you-can-eat buffet, and your Rav is a clown for not telling you to stop. In case you're unfamiliar, the all-you-can-eat part refers to all you can eat when you're in the restaurant. It does not mean all you and the buckram in your shiva can eat for a small fee to you. Taking food back for the other buckram and charging them for this is effectively stealing from the all-you-can-eat buffet owner. Here's an idea. Get a real job or ask mom and dad for more spending money to fund your lifestyle. Stealing and shadiness is never the right approach. Next question. What's an ideal amount of money to have? Enough is when you don't need to sweat living your life and paying your expenses. Enough is when the money doesn't become your identity. Enough is when people and organizations aren't hounding you because they want your money. This question reminds me of a line from the film Forrest Gump after they invest in the shrimp fishing windfall into a quote-unquote fruit company after a fruit company, which was Apple stock. Forrest relays the story about how Lieutenant Dan tells Forrest, "We don't have to worry about money anymore." And Forrest says, "That's good, one less thing." That's really the essence of the answer here. The ideal level of wealth is not a particular number. It's a mindset where money is a tool to live your life and you spend too much time and you don't spend too much time thinking about it anymore. That level of wealth is different depending on where you live and your lifestyle, but thinking about it within the context of that line from Forrest Gump may be helpful. Next question. I traveled to Europe this past summer and people seem less stressed than Americans regarding healthcare, schooling, and so forth. Don't you think it makes sense to nationalize some of these essential services so Americans don't stress about basic rights? So you went to Europe and conducted a large survey on stress levels of Europeans versus Americans? Or is nationalizing certain services your opinion and you're pretending you did research on the subject after you went sightseeing in Rome for a few days and are now using that as a quick getaway to support your opinions? I'll go with the latter. Regardless, let's assume that Europeans are less stressed for the reasons you mentioned. Keep in mind that there are two sides to that coin. Less stress and more safety nets may also mean that folks will take less risk and lack motivation. Less motivation means less innovation. This is why the US is constantly innovating with new companies and technologies while Europe has had a fairly stagnant market with lots of bureaucracy. I'm not saying one society is better than others. Actually, the United States is much better than every country in Europe. The entire continent is stained with Jewish blood. But there are certainly trade-offs for more bureaucracy and social safety nets. There's a reason why so many people want to move to the US and so many new companies get started in the US. The US has a system that is appealing and rewards hard work more than many other countries. People like that feeling of meritocracy. Others would prefer high taxes, drinking coffee and smoking all day, and having a 4-hour siesta in the middle of the workday. I'm not a big siesta guy, but that's not a bad lifestyle either. People need to determine what system works best for them and move to the country that more closely aligns with their values and the life they want. Okay, that's it for financial questions this week. And by the way, if you have a more involved personal finance situation, feel free to reach out directly to myself, and perhaps my team and I can help you. The best way to get a hold of me is via email at jonathan@parkbridgewealth.com. And finally, I'd like to end with a timely idea, actionable idea that listeners can implement to their financial lives. Today's timely idea is regarding inherited IRAs. So if someone inherited an IRA from a parent who died in 2019 or before, then you're allowed to use the old stretch IRA rules for distributing these funds. These old rules are more favorable than the current 10-year rules, which requires the funds in an inherited IRA to be distributed within 10 years of the IRA owner's death, with a few exceptions. However, under the old rules that are more favorable, you can stretch this IRA over the course of your lifetime and only need to take out required minimum distributions every year for the rest of your life. So the fund should last longer and experience more favorable tax treatment for longer. For IRAs whose owners died after 2019, they are subject to the less favorable 10-year rule, where the funds must be out of the account within 10 years of the IRA owner's death and will be subject to ordinary income taxes when they leave the IRA. There's a few planning techniques that can help circumvent that while giving up some of the upside, but that's for another conversation. As an aside, many large wealth management firms mess this up, so double check the advice you're getting from advisors at the large bulge bracket firms, especially if it relates to IRA distribution rules and probably other things as well, since there's so many conflict of interest there. Anyway, and with that, it's a wrap for this week's show. Any comments or questions, feel free to reach out directly to me via email. I love hearing from my listeners. And finally, the secret to financial success is no secret at all. It's to spend less than you make, invest the difference prudently, and ignore all the noise. See you next time on Jonathan on Money.